There are questions that change everything. Questions that arrive on frozen mornings when you've already buried your heart alongside the people you loved. Her question came on a November day in 1878 when the first snow dusted the Sacramento Mountains of New Mexico Territory, and I had just refused my 47th proposal in 3 years. My name is Ezra Thorne. They call me the Mountain Ghost. Not because I'm dead, but because I might as well be. The morning started like every other. I woke in my cabin at dawn, the altitude cold seeping through gaps in the timber. I made coffee over the fire, the steam rising into empty air. Then I did what I'd done every morning for 3 years. I set out 2 plates for breakfast. One for me. One for the family I'd lost. Sarah's plate. Benjamin's cup. Empty chairs at an empty table. My wife died holding our son's hand. Scarlet fever took them both in the winter of '75. The doctor was 3 days drunk in Tularosa. By the time he sobered up enough to ride out, my boy's lips were already blue. Sarah went 2 days later, her body too weak from nursing Benjamin to fight the same disease. I buried them on the hillside behind the cabin. 2 graves, 2 crosses, 2 reasons I stopped being human. 3 years. 47 women had approached me in Tularosa. Widows mostly. Good women. Lonely women. Women who saw a man with land and sheep and thought maybe they could build something. I said no to everyone. Politely at first, then coldly. Then I stopped going to town at all except once a month for supplies. That November morning I was preparing for my monthly trip. I checked my rifle, loaded my saddlebags with wool from my sheep, and rode down the mountain trail toward Tularosa. The town sat in a valley, maybe 200 souls, most of them ranchers or miners. It was the kind of place where everyone knew your business and everyone had an opinion about it. I tied my horse outside Red O'Brien's general store. Red was Irish, middle-aged, with the kind of face that had seen too much war and not enough laughter. He nodded when I entered. We didn't talk much. That was the arrangement I preferred. But as I was loading supplies into my saddlebag, Clara Hutchins appeared. She was a widow, maybe 42, owned a boarding house on the edge of town. Pleasant enough face, kind eyes. She'd asked me twice before. "Ezra," she said softly, "it's getting cold. Winter's coming hard this year. A man shouldn't face it alone." I kept my eyes on the bags. I manage. I'm not talking about managing. I'm talking about living. I turned to face her. My voice came out harder than I intended. "I appreciate the concern, Mrs. Hutchins, but I'm fine as I am." Her face fell, not with anger, but with something worse. Pity. I paid Red and left without another word. 47 refusals. This was number 48, though Clara hadn't quite asked the question directly. Maybe she'd learned. I mounted my horse and started back up the mountain trail. The sky was gray, heavy with snow that hadn't yet decided to fall. The wind carried that particular silence that comes before a storm. My sheep would need extra hay tonight. The water troughs would need breaking if they froze. Then I heard it. A sound that didn't belong to the mountain. Gunfire. Not the single crack of a hunter's rifle. Multiple shots, rapid, echoing from the eastern valley. Then voices. Screaming. A woman's voice, high and desperate, shouting words I didn't understand. Apache language. I stopped my horse. The mountains stretched before me, indifferent to human suffering. The smart thing, the safe thing would be to ride home. Whatever was happening in that valley had nothing to do with me. I'd made it a rule to stay out of other people's wars. But something held me there. Maybe it was the woman's voice. Maybe it was the sound of children crying. Maybe it was just that after 3 years of being dead inside, some small part of me still remembered what it meant to care. I turned my horse east. I followed the sound through pine forests and rocky outcrops. The gunfire had stopped, but I could track the aftermath. Broken branches, disturbed snow, and then blood. Dark drops on white powder leading deeper into the canyon. I dismounted and moved on foot, rifle ready. The blood trail led to a cluster of boulders near a frozen creek, and there, hidden in the shadows, I found them. A woman, 2 children, Apache, all 3 of them. The woman was maybe 27, 28. Dark hair, torn, doe-skin dress, eyes like black stones, fierce even in desperation. Blood soaked her left shoulder. She held a knife in her right hand, her body positioned between me and 2 children huddled behind her. A boy, maybe 7, a girl, maybe 5, both terrified but silent. Behind me I heard voices, 2 men speaking English with the rough accents of hired guns. She came this way, blood trails fresh. Wade wants her dead. No witnesses. I made a decision in half a heartbeat. I raised my rifle and fired once precisely. The first man went down, shot clean through the leg. The second man's horse reared and he fought for control. I fired again, closer to his head this time. A warning. He got the message and spurred his horse away, his wounded companion clinging to his saddle. Then I turned back to the woman. She hadn't moved. The knife was still raised, her eyes locked on mine. No gratitude, no relief, just pure survival instinct. "Easy," I said quietly. "They're gone. You're bleeding. Stay back." Her English was clear, educated even. That surprised me. "If I wanted to hurt you, I'd have let them do it. We don't need help from white men." "Maybe not. But you need help from someone, and I'm all that's here." Her eyes searched mine for deception. Whatever she saw, it must have satisfied her because her legs suddenly gave out. She collapsed against the boulder, the knife falling from her grip. The boy immediately moved to catch her, his small hands trying to keep her upright. I approached slowly, hands visible. The boy watched me with eyes far older than 7 years should hold. The girl peeked out from behind him, clutching a small cloth doll. "Your mother needs shelter," I said to the boy. "Can you ride?" He nodded once, sharp and certain. "Then we go. Now." I bandaged the woman's shoulder quickly, tearing strips from my shirt. The wound was deep but clean. A bullet grazed, not a through and through. She'd been lucky. I didn't mention that luck often ran out. I lifted her onto my horse, the boy climbing up behind to steady her. The girl I carried myself, her small arms wrapping around my neck. She weighed almost nothing. We rode to my cabin in silence. The woman drifted in and out of consciousness. The boy kept one hand on his mother's back, the other on a small knife at his belt. Smart kid. Cautious. I respected that. My cabin appeared through the trees, smoke rising from the chimney I'd banked that morning. It wasn't much. 2 rooms, a loft, walls of pine timber chinked with mud, but it was solid and it was hidden. I carried the woman inside, laying her on my bed. The children followed, staying close to their mother. I started water boiling, gathered clean bandages, and set out the medical supplies I kept for sheep injuries. Not ideal, but better than nothing. The woman's eyes opened. She looked around, taking in the cabin, assessing threats. When her gaze landed on her children, relief flooded her face. Then she saw me approaching with bandages and her jaw set. "I can do it myself." I stopped, set the supplies on the table beside the bed, stepped back. "Water's hot. Bandages are clean." She pulled herself up, wincing with the movement. Her fingers were steady as she unwrapped my rough bandaging and examined the wound. Then with practiced efficiency she cleaned it, applied a paste I didn't recognize from a small pouch at her belt, and rebandaged it. The work was better than anything I could have done. I watched from across the room. The boy stood guard near his mother. The girl sat by the fire, shivering despite the warmth. "Hungry?" I asked. The boy's eyes flicked to his mother. She nodded once. Only then did he accept the bread and dried meat I offered. The girl took hers with small hands. "Thank you, sir," the girl said in perfect English. I blinked. The clarity of her speech, the formal politeness of it, caught me off guard. "Where'd you learn English?" I asked the woman. "Mission school, before the war." Her voice was flat, offering no more than necessary. "You speak it well. So do your people when they want something from us." The comment had edges. I didn't take offense. She'd earned her bitterness. I gave them space, busying myself with stoking the fire and preparing a simple stew. The children ate in silence, their eyes darting between their mother and me. The woman ate nothing, just watched me with that same measuring look. As evening fell and the fire cast long shadows, I broke the silence. "You can stay until the storm passes. Then you'll need to move on." "Fair enough. Those men, they'll come back." "I know. Why do they want you dead?" She was quiet for a long moment. Then, perhaps because I'd asked directly instead of dancing around it, she answered, "Because I saw what they did, and I'm the only one left who can tell." The boy Neol, I learned later, had found a spot near the fire where he could watch both the door and his mother. Smart positioning. The girl Sani had curled up against her mother's side, the cloth doll tucked under her chin. I realized something as I watched them. The woman had wrapped the wound herself with skill that spoke of necessity, not learning. She'd positioned her children for maximum protection while maintaining her own ability to fight. Everything about her movements said, survivor, not victim. "You do that better than the doc in town," I said, nodding at her shoulder. Her lips twitched, almost a smile. "Your town doc probably never had to patch wounds while running from soldiers." I fell silent. She was right. What did I know about that kind of survival? "How long can we stay?" she asked. "Until the storm passes. Maybe 2 days. And then you go where you need to go, and I go back to being alone." She studied me for a long moment. "You wear loneliness like armor. It keeps me safe. Does it? Or does it just keep you frozen?" I didn't answer that. Didn't have an answer that wouldn't sound like a lie. That night I gave them the bed. I took the floor near the fire. Old habit from when Benjamin would have nightmares and I'd sleep by his door. The memory stabbed through me, sharp and familiar. Near midnight, small footsteps approached. Sani stood beside me, her doll clutched tight. "Why you live alone?" she whispered. From the bed, her mother's voice came sharp. "Sani, don't ask that." But I found myself answering. "I had a family once. They're gone now." Sani nodded solemnly, as if she understood loss better than any 5-year-old should. Then she reached out and patted my shoulder with her tiny hand before returning to bed. I lay awake long after their breathing settled into sleep. The woman's words echoed in my mind. Frozen. Was that what I was? Not dead, just frozen. Morning came with fresh snow and the reality of consequences. I checked the perimeter around the cabin at dawn. Fresh horse tracks, multiple riders circling but not approaching. They knew the woman was here. They were just deciding how to handle it. When I came back inside, the woman was awake, already checking her wound. The children were still sleeping. "They know you're here," I said quietly. She nodded. "How many?" "Tracks suggest 4, maybe 5. They'll come back with more. You should give us supplies and let us go, before you're caught in this." "Little late for that. They saw me yesterday." For the first time, something like regret crossed her face. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. I made the choice." "Why, you don't know us." I looked at the sleeping children, thought of Benjamin's empty chair. "Maybe that's why." As the morning light grew stronger, the woman finally told me her name. Kaya. It meant something in Apache, she said, but she didn't translate. The boy was Neol, wind. The girl was Sani. Old one, she explained with the first real warmth I'd heard in her voice, because the child had been solemn even as a baby. "Who are they?" I asked. "The men hunting you." Kaya's face hardened. "They wore no uniforms. But I know who leads them. Captain Thornton Wade. Fort Stanton." I knew the name. Everyone in the territory knew Wade. Aggressive, ambitious. A man people said was destined for higher rank. "Why does an army captain want you dead?" Kaya looked at her sleeping children. When she spoke, her voice was carefully controlled. 3 weeks ago, our camp, Red Canyon, 40 miles east of Fort Stanton, 23 people, mostly women, children, elders. The men were out hunting." She paused, gathering herself. "It wasn't a battle. It was a slaughter. and Wade led it. The Army attacks Apache camps. It's war. This wasn't war. We weren't hostile. We'd made peace settled near the reservation. And they didn't just attack. They burned everything, took all our supplies, our weapons. Weapons, rifles, good ones, new ones. That was the strange part. Wade insisted we had illegal weapons, but we didn't. Not until 3 days before. I was starting to see it. Someone sold you guns. A white man came, said he worked for Wade, said we needed protection. We refused. 2 days later, Wade came with soldiers and accused us of having illegal weapons. We showed him they'd just been offered to us. He didn't care. He killed everyone to hide that he'd been selling guns, or to get the guns back and sell them again. I don't know. I only know I hid my children in a root cellar and watched through a crack as Wade shot my husband in the head while he was holding his hands up. Her voice never broke. That somehow made it worse. You're a witness. I'm the only witness left alive. The weight of that settled over the cabin like fresh snow, heavy, suffocating. If he finds you, he finds proof of his crime, so he makes sure I disappear. Outside, the wind picked up. Through the window I saw movement in the tree line, riders, more than yesterday. Kaya saw them too. Her hand went to the knife at her belt. Niol stirred, woke immediately alert. The boy woke like a soldier. Stay inside, I told them. Keep the children back from the windows. I grabbed my rifle and stepped onto the porch. 6 men on horseback stopped 50 yards out. None wore uniforms. All carried military-grade weapons. The lead man called out, "We're looking for an Apache woman. 2 children. Wade's orders." Nobody here but me. Captain says otherwise. Says you got her yesterday. Interfered with Army business. If it was Army business, you'd be wearing uniforms. The man's jaw tightened. Mind if we check? Yes, I do. That's not friendly, mister. I'm not a friendly man. We stared at each other across the snow. His hand drifted toward his gun. Mine was already on my rifle. Then from inside the cabin came a sound that changed everything. A sharp thwack, and one of the men screamed, clutching his face. An arrow, no a slingshot stone, had struck him square in the eye. I glanced back. Niol stood at the window, a small slingshot in his hands, his face set with grim determination. The men's horses reared. In the confusion, I fired once into the ground in front of the lead rider's horse. The animal bucked, nearly throwing him. "Next one won't miss," I shouted. The injured man was screaming, his companions trying to control their horses and help him simultaneously. The lead rider pointed at me. "Wade will hear about this." "Good. Tell him if he wants her, he'll have to go through me." They retreated, dragging their wounded companion. I waited until they were out of sight before lowering my rifle and turning back inside. Niol stood by the window, still holding his slingshot. I expected fear. Instead, I saw defiance. "I told you to stay hidden. I don't hide while someone fights for us." Kaya pulled her son back, but her eyes met mine with something new in them. Not gratitude exactly, something more complex. Recognition, maybe, of what I wasn't sure yet. "They'll come back," she said. "More of them." "I know." "Then we can't stay here. We need a plan." She said we, not you, not help me. We. "There's a marshal in Tularosa," I said. "John Garrett. He's a fair man." Kaya's laugh was bitter. "A white marshal will believe an Apache woman. He'll believe evidence. Do you have any—" She hesitated. Then slowly she reached into her dress and pulled out a small leather journal. Water-stained, blood-spotted, but intact. "I took this from Wade's tent while they were killing everyone." I opened it. Inside, written in neat script, were lists, dates, names, locations, quantities of rifles, prices, evidence of systematic weapons trafficking spanning 3 years, transactions with Apache, with Mexican bandits, with outlaws, and every transaction tied back to Captain Thornton Wade. "This is enough to hang him," I said quietly, "if anyone believes it, if we live long enough to show them." I looked at Kaya. at Neol standing guard, at little Sani peeking out from behind her mother. 3 people who'd just entered my life yesterday. 3 people I could still turn away, send into the mountains, back to being someone else's problem. But I thought of Sarah's voice, Benjamin's laughter, the empty plates I set out every morning. You can't live in graveyards forever, James. No. But maybe I could start living again by giving someone else a chance to survive. How many men does Wade have? I asked. At least 20. Why? Because I just decided to keep you alive. You don't have to do this. I met her eyes. I know, but they saw me yesterday. They saw me today. This is my fight now, too. For the first time, Kaya's defensive posture eased slightly. She nodded once. Acceptance of partnership, not rescue. I walked to my gun cabinet, opened it. Inside were 3 rifles, 2 pistols, ammunition, and a shotgun I'd kept maintained but hadn't fired in 3 years. Tomorrow we ride to Tularosa, I said. We find Marshal Garrett. We show him this journal, and we let the law handle Wade. And if the law doesn't help, then we do what we have to do. Kaya looked at me with new assessment. You're not like other white men I've met. I'm not sure I'm like much of anything anymore. Maybe that's why you helped us. You've got nothing left to lose. Maybe. Or maybe I've got something to gain. What? I didn't have words for it yet. But as I looked at these 3 strangers in my cabin, something stirred in the frozen space where my heart used to be. Not warmth, exactly. Not yet. But the possibility of warmth. The first crack in 3 years of ice. Outside, snow began to fall again. Heavy, persistent, the kind that buries tracks and hides truth. But inside in the firelight, 4 people who'd been alone were suddenly tentatively together. It was the first decision. The easy one. The hard ones were still coming. But for the first time in 3 years, I wasn't facing winter alone. And maybe, just maybe, that meant something. Part 2. Building partnership. The next morning came with hard choices and harder men. I woke before dawn to the sound of horses, not close but circling. 6 riders, maybe 7, keeping distance but making their presence known. They weren't trying to hide anymore. That meant Wade had decided subtlety was finished. Kaya was already awake, checking her wound by the early light. The bandage was clean, her movements sure. She'd heal given time. But time was the one thing we didn't have. They're out there, she said without looking up. I know. More than yesterday. I counted 7. She finished wrapping her shoulder and stood testing her range of motion. Satisfied, she moved to wake her children. Neol came alert immediately, that soldier's instinct again. Sani took longer, rubbing her eyes with small fists. We're leaving today, I told them. Tularosa. The Marshal. We ride hard and we ride careful. Kaya nodded. No arguments, no questions. She understood the stakes. We ate a cold breakfast. No fire, no smoke to give away our movements. I packed supplies while Kaya prepared the children, speaking to them in low Apache, giving instructions I couldn't understand, but whose meaning was clear. Stay quiet, stay alert, trust no one but family. By the time the sun broke over the mountains, we were mounted and moving. Kaya rode behind me, Neol and Sani on my second horse, a gentle mare I'd used for pack work. The children sat small and silent, Neol's arms around his sister. We took the long route down, avoiding the main trail. Through dense pine forests where the snow was thinner, across rocky terrain where hooves left no tracks. It added an hour to the journey, but it kept us hidden, until it didn't. They came at us where the trail narrowed through a rocky pass. 6 men on horseback blocking the path ahead. The same group from yesterday, plus reinforcements. End of the road, the leader called. He was 40 maybe, with a scar splitting his left eyebrow. Captain Wade wants to talk to the woman. I kept my rifle across my saddle finger near the trigger. Tell Wade he can talk to the marshal. Wade don't answer to no territorial marshal. Then he can answer to a federal judge. The man smiled without humor. You got more spine than sense, mister, but spine won't stop bullets. Neither will talk, so either move or find out how good my aim is." We stared at each other across 30 yards of frozen ground. His men shifted in their saddles, hands drifting toward weapons. Behind me, I felt Kaya's hand rest lightly on my back, not seeking protection, offering partnership. Then Neol did something that changed the equation. The boy pulled his slingshot from his belt and fired in one smooth motion. The stone struck the lead man's hand just as he reached for his gun. The man yelped his pistol, falling into the snow. "Next one takes your eye," Kaya called out in clear English. "Like yesterday." The threat hung in the cold air. The men recognized her voice, recognized the promise in it. These weren't soldiers following orders. These were hired guns paid to murder, and hired guns had a limit to their courage when their employer wasn't watching. I used their hesitation. I spurred my horse forward. Rifle aimed, the mare following close behind. The men had to choose move or fight. Fighting meant casualties, meant witnesses, meant complications Wade wouldn't want. They moved. We rode through their line close enough to smell unwashed bodies and gun oil. The scarred leader watched us pass his face, promising this wasn't over. "Wade will hear about this," he called after us. I didn't bother answering. We both knew what was coming. We reached Tularosa by mid-morning. The town looked smaller in daylight than I remembered, more vulnerable. 200 souls living in wooden buildings that wouldn't stop a determined attack. The main street was mud and ice, lined with a general store, a saloon, a church, and the marshal's office at the far end. People stopped to stare as we rode in. An Apache woman and 2 children with the mountain ghost. Might as well have been a circus parade. I saw Clara Hutchins standing outside her boarding house, her face registering surprise and something else. Not jealousy. Understanding, maybe. Red O'Brien stepped out of his store, his Irish face unreadable. But he gave me a small nod. A signal. "You've got at least one friend here." We dismounted at the marshal's office. Marshal John Garrett stood in the doorway, 55 years old, gray hair, eyes that had seen too much trouble to be surprised by more. "Ezra Thorne," he said slowly. 3 years I haven't seen you in town except to buy supplies. Now you bring guests." Kaya stepped forward, her bearing proud, despite the blood-stained dress. "Not guests. A witness to murder and treason." Garrett's eyebrows rose, but he stepped aside. "Then you'd better come in and talk." Inside the office was small but organized. A desk, filing cabinets, a gun rack, and a wood stove putting out steady heat. Garrett gestured to chairs. We sat. The children stayed close to their mother. "Coffee?" Garrett offered. "For the children, too," Kaya said. "If you have milk and sugar." Garrett studied her, then nodded. "My daughter used to take it that way." He prepared 4 cups, 3 with coffee, 2 smaller ones with warm milk sweetened with honey. Sonny's eyes lit up when she tasted it. "Sweet," she whispered. Garrett smiled. Every child deserves something sweet, even in hard times. It was a small moment, but it mattered. It said Garrett saw these children as children, not problems, not threats. "Now," he said, settling behind his desk, "tell me about murder and treason." Kaya did. She spoke without emotion, laying out facts like stones. October 24th, 1878. Red Canyon, 40 miles east of Fort Stanton. 23 dead. Captain Thornton Wade leading men without uniforms, the weapons sale, the slaughter, the cover-up. Garrett listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "That's a serious accusation." "It's the truth." "Truth needs evidence." Kaya pulled out the journal and placed it on his desk. Garrett opened it carefully, reading the precise handwriting, the damning lists. His face grew grave as he turned pages. "Where did you get this?" "Wade's tent, while he was busy killing my people." Garrett looked at her with new respect. "That took courage. That took survival." He closed the journal. "This is enough to start an investigation. Federal crimes. Army corruption. But investigation takes time. How much time? I asked. Weeks, maybe months. We don't have weeks. I know. Which is why I need to keep this safe and keep you safer. He looked at Kaya. You'll need protection until this reaches the right people. Can you protect her? I asked. Garrett's silence was answer enough. The door opened. A young man in cavalry uniform stepped in. Lieutenant Marcus Riley, maybe 26, with the uncertain face of someone still learning what kind of man he wanted to be. Marshal Captain Wade sent me to inquire about an Apache woman and 2 children reportedly in town. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Kaya's hand moved to her knife. I shifted position, putting myself between Riley and the children. Then Wade himself walked in. He was tall, 40 maybe, with a scar in the shape of a V on his left cheek. His uniform was immaculate, his bearing confident. He looked like every recruiting poster's image of an honorable soldier. His eyes found Kaya and lit with recognition and satisfaction. There you are, he said pleasantly. I've been looking everywhere. Kaya stood slowly. I'm sure you have. Wade turned to Garrett. Marshal, this woman is wanted for killing 2 of my men. She's Apache, a fugitive from reservation lands. Interesting, Garrett said calmly. She tells me you killed 23 of her people. Wade's smile didn't falter. Apache lies, Marshal. Surely you're not naive enough to believe her over an Army officer. Garrett placed the journal on his desk, open to a page of transactions. I believe evidence. Wade's eyes narrowed as he recognized the journal. For just a second his mask slipped. Then it was back smooth as oil. That's stolen Army property. Then you won't mind if I send it to Fort Union for verification. Let the Army investigate its own. The room went still. Wade and Garrett stared at each other, 2 men with badges and authority, neither willing to bend. Do what you must, Marshal, Wade said finally. But the woman stays in custody, for her own safety. She's under my protection. For now. Wade turned to leave, Riley following. At the door, Wade paused. Marshal, you're making a mistake. Don't let this mountain hermit and his Apache friend drag you into something you'll regret. The only thing I regret is not looking into you sooner. Wade's smile turned cold. We'll see how long that conviction lasts. They left. Through the window I watched them mount up. Wade said something to Riley that made the younger man's face tighten with discomfort. He'll come back, Kaya said quietly. Tonight. Maybe tomorrow. But he'll come. Then we need a safer place than this office, Garrett said. The door opened again. Red O'Brien stepped in, his weathered face serious. I heard you might need a place to keep some folks safe, he said to Garrett. My store's got a 2nd floor, 2 rooms. I've got a rifle and a clear view of the street. Red, this could get dangerous, Garrett warned. I came to this country running from men like Wade, English lords who thought power meant they could do anything. Red looked at Kaya and her children. I won't let him win here. Kaya studied the Irish merchant. Why would you help us? Because I had a daughter once, about your girl's age. Cholera took her 6 years back. He nodded at Sonny. She'd want me to help. The weight of shared loss hung in the air. Different circumstances, same grief. Thank you, Kaya said softly. Don't thank me yet. Let's get you through tonight first. We moved to the general store. Red's 2nd floor was spare but secure. 2 rooms, good sight lines, and a back stairs for escape if needed. Red brought up supplies while I checked the windows, the approaches, the fields of fire. Kaya settled the children in the smaller room. Sonny found an old cloth doll on a shelf and held it up questioningly. That was Molly's, Red said gently. My daughter's. She'd want you to have it. Sonny clutched the doll to her chest, her young face solemn with the understanding that this was a gift of grief as much as kindness. Evening fell. We took turns keeping watch. Me at the front window, Red at the back, Kaya checking on the children, then joining me. You didn't have to do this, she said quietly. I know. Why did you? I thought about Sarah and Benjamin, about 3 years of empty plates and frozen grief, about a question I'd been asked 48 times in 3 years, and the one time I finally gave a different answer. Maybe I was tired of being alone. Alone is safe. So is being dead. She smiled slightly. Are you always this grim? Are you always this direct? Apache don't have time for pretty words. We say what we mean. I like that. We fell into comfortable silence watching the street. Then Kaya spoke again. Ahiga, my husband, he was brave. Maybe too brave. He believed honor was worth dying for. She paused. I need someone who believes living is worth fighting for. Is that what you think I believe? You're here. You could have stayed in your cabin, but you're here. Before I could answer, Niol appeared in the doorway. Mother, I can't sleep. Kaya gathered him close. I know, little hawk, but try. Tomorrow we may need to be strong. Will Mr. Ezra stay with us? Both of them looked at me. The boy with hope. The mother with something more guarded. Not quite trust. Not yet. But maybe the beginning of it. I'll stay, I said. Tonight, and as long as you need. Niol nodded and returned to his sister. Kaya watched him go, then turned back to me. He called you Mr. Ezra, not the white man, not the stranger. That means something. What does it mean? It means he's starting to trust you. For Apache children, trust isn't given lightly. I'll try to earn it. You already are. Midnight came with frost and silence. Too much silence. Red noticed it first. Streets empty, not even dogs moving. I looked out. He was right. Tularosa usually had night sounds. Horses, the saloon, something. Now there was nothing but winter stillness. They're coming, I said. We woke Kaya, got the children into the back room with instructions to hide in the storm cellar if things went bad. Then we waited. They hit us at 2 a.m. 8 men with torches and guns surrounding the store. The leader, the scarred man from this morning, called out, "Send out the Apache or we burn you out." Red answered from an upstairs window, "Come and take her." The first shots shattered glass. We returned fire measured and precise. One attacker went down. Another stumbled back hit. But they kept coming, emboldened by numbers. They threw torches through the broken windows. Flames caught on the dry wood, spreading fast. "We need to move," I shouted. "Backstairs." Red led the way, limping from a wound I hadn't seen him take. We grabbed the children and ran, down the back stairs into the alley, but the attackers had anticipated it. 3 men waiting in the shadows. Kaya threw her knife without hesitation. It took 1 man in the shoulder, spinning him around. I fired twice, dropped another. The third hesitated, then ran. We sprinted for the stables. Got the horses. Mounted in controlled chaos. Kaya pulling Sani up while I grabbed Niol. Behind us, the general store was fully ablaze, flames reaching for the winter sky. Marshal Garrett appeared with 5 armed townspeople. "Stop federal authority." The attackers scattered into darkness. Garrett fired a warning shot, then another. The message was clear. This wasn't just Wade's game anymore. But the scarred leader retreating called back, "Wade pays better than the law. We'll finish this." We gathered in the street, the burning store painting everything orange and black. Red stared at his life's work, turning to ash. "I'm sorry," Kaya said to him. "Don't be. It's just wood and goods. Your people. That matters more." Garrett approached, his face grim. "This town isn't safe anymore. You need to leave. Fort Union. It's 3 days north. Federal jurisdiction. Wade has no power there." 3 days through open territory, I said. "He'll hunt us every mile." "Then you ride fast, and you ride smart." Kaya looked at me. "We leave before dawn." "Agreed." "What about you?" I asked Red. He smiled despite everything. "I've got insurance, and I've got a story to tell about how a brave woman and a mountain hermit tried to do the right thing." He looked at Garrett. "I'll testify." When the time comes. So will I, Garrett said. But first let's get them to Fort Union alive. We returned to the marshal's office to plan the route. As Garrett spread out a map, Kaya leaned close to me. "You could still walk away," she whispered. "This isn't your fight. Not really." I looked at her, at Neol standing guard by his sleeping sister, at the journal on Garrett's desk that could hang a powerful man, at 3 years of being half alive. "Yes, it is," I said. "It became my fight the moment I pulled that trigger yesterday, maybe even before." "Why before?" "Because you asked a question I didn't know I'd been waiting to hear. I didn't ask you anything yesterday. Not in words. But you stood there bleeding, protecting your children, refusing to beg. You asked if I was the kind of man who'd help, or the kind who'd walk away." I paused. I answered. Kaya's hand found mine on the table, squeezed once, brief, meaningful. Then we ride together. Together. Outside, the first hint of dawn touched the eastern sky. Somewhere out there, Wade was gathering more men. Somewhere, Riley was questioning his orders. Somewhere, consequences were coming. But in that moment, in that small office, 4 people who'd been scattered by violence found themselves pointed in the same direction. Not because it was safe, not because it was easy, because sometimes living means choosing the hard road. And sometimes choosing the hard road means you're finally alive again. Part 3. The Journey. We left Tularosa before sunrise when the world was still caught between night and dawn. 4 souls on 3 horses riding north toward Fort Union and whatever fate waited there. The land opened before us in shades of gray and white. Rolling hills gave way to high desert, then back to pine forests climbing mountain slopes. It was beautiful country, deadly country, the kind of terrain where you could see enemies coming from miles away, but they could see you just as easily. By mid-morning of the first day, we'd covered maybe 15 miles. Good time, but not good enough. Fort Union was 90 miles north. 3 days if we pushed hard, 4 if we were careful. Wade would be following with 20 men, maybe more. He had resources we didn't, fresh horses, supplies, numbers. What we had was necessity. We stopped briefly at a creek crossing to water the horses. Kaya moved like someone who'd spent her life in wild country reading the landscape the way I read sheep trails. She found sign I would have missed. Boot prints 2 days old. Horse droppings. Evidence of scouts. "Wade had men along this route already," she said quietly. "Before yesterday. He was planning for this. He's always planning. Men like him, they think 3 moves ahead. Then we need to think 4 moves." Neol approached his small face serious. "Father, I mean Mr. Ezra." He stumbled over the words, uncertain of what to call me. "Just Ezra is fine." "Ezra, Mother showed me tracks. Can you teach me your way? The white man's way of reading land." I looked at Kaya. She nodded permission. "Watch the sky," I told him, pointing to high clouds streaking from the west. "Those clouds mean weather's coming, maybe snow. When the wind shifts, you feel it on your face before you see trees bending, and tracks you don't just look at the print. You look at how deep, how clean the edges are. Fresh tracks have sharp edges. Old ones blur." The boy absorbed every word like water on dry ground. He reminded me of Benjamin, that same hunger to learn, to be useful, to be valued. "You're good with him," Kaya said after Neol ran ahead to practice reading the trail. "I had practice once. Your son, Benjamin, he'd be 10 now, always asking questions, always wanting to help." I paused. "Some days I can barely remember his voice. Other days it's so clear it hurts. Ahiga's voice is fading for me too. I thought I'd never forget. But grief is strange. It takes pieces of memory we want to keep and leaves pieces we'd rather lose." We rode in silence for a while, sharing the weight of loss without needing more words. That evening we made camp in a sheltered ravine. No fire, cold food. The children huddled under blankets while Kaya and I took turns keeping watch. Around midnight she joined me at my post. "Can't sleep," I asked. I don't sleep well when people want me dead. Fair enough. She sat beside me close enough that I felt her warmth in the cold air. Tell me about your wife. Sarah, why? Because you set a plate for her every morning. Because you locked yourself away for 3 years. I want to know who she was. I thought about refusing. But Kaya had shared her pain. It seemed only fair to share mine. She was a school teacher, came west because she wanted adventure, found me instead. I smiled at the memory. First time we met, I was bringing sheep through town, and one got loose, ran right through her classroom window. She wasn't angry. She laughed, said it was the most exciting thing to happen in Tularosa all year. She sounds kind. She was. Too kind for the territory, really. She tried to start a school that would teach Apache children alongside white children. The townsfolk rejected it, said it was dangerous. She was heartbroken. But she stayed. She stayed, said if she couldn't change the world, she'd at least change our small piece of it. Then Benjamin came, and he was her world. My voice caught. When the fever took him, I think part of her wanted to follow. She tried to fight it, but her heart wasn't in surviving without him. Kaya's hand found mine in the darkness. You blame yourself. The doctor was drunk. I should have ridden to the next town, should have done something more. Should is a word that haunts survivors. I have my own. I should have hidden better, should have fought harder, should have saved Ahiga. She squeezed my hand. But should doesn't change what is. We can only move forward. Is that what you're doing? Moving forward? I'm trying, with 2 children who need a future more than I need revenge. She looked at me. What are you doing, Ezra Thorne? I don't know yet. A week ago I would have said surviving. Now maybe something more. Something more like what? Before I could answer, Sonny appeared, the cloth doll clutched in her small arms. Mother, I had a bad dream. Kaya gathered her daughter close. Dreams can't hurt you, little one. I dreamed the bad men caught us. They won't. Your mother won't let them, and neither will Ezra. Sonny looked at me with those solemn eyes. Are you going to be our new father? The question hit like a physical blow. Kaya started to apologize, but I held up a hand. Your father was a brave man, I told Sonny. I could never replace him, but I can promise to protect you, to teach your brother, to help your mother. If that's what you need, then yes, I'll be those things. Okay. She said it simply, as if my answer settled something important. Then she returned to her blanket and was asleep within minutes. Kaya stared after her daughter. She's never asked anyone that before. Children see things adults miss. What do you see, Ezra? I looked at this woman who'd crashed into my frozen existence, who'd brought chaos and purpose in equal measure, who'd reminded me that surviving and living were different things. I see someone worth fighting for. The moment stretched between us, heavy with possibility. Then Kaya leaned in and kissed my cheek, brief, chaste, but full of meaning. Get some sleep, she said. I'll take next watch. I did, and for the first time in 3 years, I didn't dream of graves. The second day brought harder terrain and fresh concerns. We were climbing into the mountains now, following a trail that would take us through a narrow pass called Devil's Throat. It was the fastest route, but also the most dangerous. A perfect place for an ambush. Around midday we came upon an abandoned trading post. The building was weathered but intact, and outside it sat an old man on a wooden chair smoking a pipe, as if he had all the time in the world. He was Apache and Mexican both, you could see it in his features. Maybe 65, with gray braids and eyes that had witnessed too much history. Kaya, he said in Apache, then switched to English. Daughter of Red Skywalker, you're far from home. Uncle Samuel. Kaya dismounted and embraced him with genuine warmth. I didn't know you were still here? Where else would I go? This land has been mine for 40 years. He looked at me with shrewd assessment. And you travel with the mountain ghost. Times are strange. We need to reach Fort Union, I said. 3 days. Samuel puffed his pipe. I know. Wade's men came through yesterday, asking about an Apache woman and 2 children. I told them I hadn't seen anyone. They didn't believe me, but they moved on. Which way did they go? North, toward Devil's Throat. He smiled without humor. They're waiting for you there. Wade knows it's the only fast route. Kaya cursed softly in Apache. Then we go around. Add 2 days. Or, Samuel said slowly, you don't avoid the trap. You spring it on your terms. I leaned forward. What do you mean? Apache don't run into traps. They make them. He stood and walked to the trading post door, gesturing us inside. On a rough table he sketched a map in spilled flour. Devil's Throat is narrow, steep walls. Wade will position men on the high ground, thinking you'll ride through the valley floor like rabbits. He traced a different route with his finger. But there's a side canyon here, rarely used, rocky, difficult. But it leads above the main pass. You take the high ground first, and suddenly the hunters become the hunted. An ambush of our own, Kaya said. More than that, a message. That you're not helpless. That Wade should fear you as much as you fear him. I studied the crude map. It's risky. Everything is risky now. At least this gives you advantage. Samuel provided extra ammunition, dried food, and a blessing. He spoke in Apache, his voice rhythmic and ancient, touching foreheads with Neol and Sani. Then he turned to me. You protect more than lives, Mountain Ghost. You protect hope. The hope that different people can stand together. Don't waste it. I'll try. Try is what cowards do. You'll succeed or die. There's no middle path now. We left the trading post, with a plan forming. Kaya and I discussed it quietly as we rode, refining details, considering contingencies. She knew Apache tactics. I knew mountain warfare. Together we built something that might work. That night, camped in a pine grove, I found Kaya teaching Neol how to move silently through brush. The boy was awkward at first, but his mother was patient, showing him how to place feet, how to control breathing, how to become part of the forest. He's learning fast, I observed. He has to. Apache boys become warriors young. The world doesn't give us time for slow learning. He's 7. I was 6 when I learned to track, 5 when I learned to skin game. Age doesn't matter. Survival does. I watched them, and something in my chest tightened. These weren't my children. This wasn't my family. But they were starting to feel like they could be. Later, when the children slept, Kaya sat beside me. Tomorrow we fight, she said. Tomorrow we fight. I need you to promise something. What? If it goes wrong, if Wade takes me, you take my children and run. Don't try to save me. Just run and keep them safe. Kaya, I'm not going to... Promise. Her voice was fierce. They matter more than I do, more than you do, more than anything. Promise me, Ezra. I looked into her eyes and saw the absolute certainty of a mother's love. The kind of love that would sacrifice anything, even itself, for the next generation. I promise, I said, but I'm also promising I won't let it come to that. You can't control everything. No, but I can control what I'm willing to fight for. She searched my face for something. Whatever she found must have satisfied her, because she leaned against my shoulder. Tell me about your cabin, she said. The one on the mountain. Why? Because I want to imagine somewhere after this, somewhere safe. So I told her. About the view of the valley. The spring that never ran dry. The meadow where sheep grazed. The garden Sarah had planted that I'd let grow wild. The extra room we'd built for Benjamin that stood empty now. It sounds peaceful, Kaya said. It was. Before it became a prison. What if it became a home again? With who? She didn't answer directly. Instead, she asked, Is there room for 4? My heart stuttered. There could be. Then maybe that's what we're fighting for. Not just to survive, but to have a place to go after. You'd want that, a cabin on a mountain with a man you barely know. I know enough. I know you set plates for the dead because you still care. I know you risked everything for strangers. I know my children trust you, and they don't trust easily." She lifted her head to look at me. "And I know I feel safer with you than I have in months. That's enough to start with. Kaya, don't say anything now. Just think about it. If we survive tomorrow, we'll talk more." She stood and returned to her children, leaving me alone with possibilities I'd thought were buried forever. Morning came too soon. We rose before dawn and began the difficult climb to the side canyon Samuel had shown us. The going was steep and treacherous, horses struggling over loose rock. But we made it by mid-morning, positioning ourselves on a ridge overlooking Devil's Throat. And there, as Samuel had predicted, were Wade's men. 12 of them positioned along the main trail, weapons ready, expecting us to ride into their trap like fools. "We should wait for them to relax," Kaya whispered. "Vigilance fades." Agreed. We give it an hour. We spent that hour in tense silence, watching the men below shift and fidget, their discipline slowly eroding. Then finally 2 scouts came riding up the trail, reporting to the main group. "No sign of them," we heard one say. "Maybe they took another route." Perfect. Doubt was a warrior's worst enemy. Kaya looked at me. Now. She moved into position with her bow, me with my rifle. Nyol and Sani stayed hidden in a cave with instructions we'd drilled into them. If shooting started, they stayed put no matter what. Kaya's first arrow flew silent and true, taking down a scout at the far end. Before anyone realized what happened, I fired, dropping a second man. The remaining soldiers scrambled for cover, shouting in confusion, unable to see where the attack came from. We had the high ground. We had surprise. For the first time since this nightmare began, we had the advantage. The battle lasted maybe 10 minutes, though it felt like hours. Kaya's arrows were devastating, forcing men to take cover behind inadequate rocks. My rifle fire was measured and precise, each shot counting. The soldiers returned fire wildly, bullets striking stone far from our position. Then I saw him. Wade himself at the rear, directing his men. And beside him, Lieutenant Riley, looking uncertain. Wade shouted orders, trying to organize a retreat. That's when Riley made a choice that changed everything. He refused to fire in our direction. "Riley!" Wade screamed. "Fire, damn you!" "Sir, this is wrong. These are the people we're supposed to protect." Wade's response was immediate. He drew his pistol and shot Riley. Not to kill, but to wound. The young lieutenant crumpled, shot through the shoulder. The other soldiers saw it, saw their captain shoot one of his own men for hesitating. Whatever loyalty Wade had commanded died in that moment. "I didn't sign up for this," one soldier shouted and rode away. Others followed, deserting rather than die for Wade's corruption. In seconds, Wade's force was down to 6 men, then 4, then just Wade and 2 loyalists. "This isn't over," Wade screamed up at us. "You hear me? This isn't over." He fled, his remaining men following. They disappeared down the trail, leaving behind dead, wounded, and the shattered remains of authority built on lies. I scrambled down to where Riley lay. The young lieutenant was conscious, pressing his hand against his shoulder wound. "Help!" he gasped. "Please!" Kaya reached him first, her healer's instincts overriding any grudge. She examined the wound quickly. "You'll live, if we stop the bleeding." "I'm sorry," Riley said through gritted teeth. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know what he was doing." "But you suspected," I said. "Yes, but suspecting isn't proof. And the army, they protect their officers." He looked at Kaya. "I'll testify. Everything I know, everything I've seen, if you let me live." Kaya met my eyes. I saw the question there. This man wore the same uniform as those who'd killed her husband. Had he been at Red Canyon? Did it matter? "We let him live," I said. "He's more valuable alive." Kaya nodded and began treating Riley's wound with the efficiency of someone who'd patched too many injuries. As she worked, Riley kept talking, words spilling out like confession. "Wade's been running weapons for 3 years, selling to Apache, to Mexican bandits, to anyone with money. then recovering the weapons by force and selling them again. He's made a fortune. But it was never about money. It was about promotion. Every recovered weapon cache meant commendations. Every hostile encounter meant he looked like a hero. And the people he killed, Kaya asked coldly. Casualties of war, he called them. Necessary sacrifices. Riley's face twisted. I started questioning orders 6 months ago. That's when I became a liability. You're a liability to him now regardless, I said. He just tried to kill you. Then I have nothing to lose by telling the truth. We helped Riley onto a horse and began the journey back toward Tularosa. Fort Union was still 2 days north, but now we had something more valuable than distance. We had a witness from inside Wade's command. As we rode, Niall came alongside me. Father, he said, and this time the word came without hesitation. You and Mother fought well together. We make a good team. Does that mean you'll stay after Fort Union? I looked ahead at Kaya, her back straight despite exhaustion, her children safe because of her courage and intelligence. I thought about empty cabins and empty plates, about 3 years of being frozen and 1 week of beginning to thaw. Yes, I told Niall, I'll stay. The boy smiled, a rare expression on his serious face. Good. Sonny was worried you'd leave. I'm not leaving. Promise. I thought about all the promises I'd broken, to Sarah, to Benjamin, to myself, about how easy it was to make promises and how hard to keep them. But sometimes a promise to a 7-year-old boy carries more weight than all the broken vows of the past combined. I promise, I said. And for the first time in 3 years I meant it. Part 4. Community and Preparation. We returned to Tularosa with Riley wounded but alive, evidence mounting, and Wade on the run. But victory felt premature. Men like Captain Thornton Wade didn't surrender quietly. They gathered forces, planned retaliation, and struck when you thought you were safe. Marshal Garrett met us at the edge of town, his weathered face registering relief and concern in equal measure. You're alive, he said simply. Barely, I replied. But we have something better than survival. We have testimony. Riley, pale from blood loss but conscious, straightened in his saddle. Marshal, I'm Lieutenant Marcus Riley, 3rd Cavalry, Fort Stanton. I have information about Captain Wade's illegal activities. Arms trafficking, murder, treason. Garrett's eyebrows rose. That's a serious accusation from a military officer. It's the truth. And Wade shot me for refusing to follow illegal orders. Riley gestured to his shoulder. I have the wound to prove it. Then you'd better come inside and make an official statement. But as we moved toward the marshal's office, the town itself seemed to close in around us. People emerged from buildings forming small clusters. Some faces showed curiosity, others showed hostility, and a few showed the kind of calculation that meant trouble. A man named Frank Hollister stepped forward from the crowd. He was 45, owned a small ranch, and had always struck me as the kind of man who valued comfort over courage. "Marshal," Frank said loudly, playing to the audience, "why are we risking our lives for an Apache? Wade's got 20 men, maybe more. He'll burn this whole town down looking for her." Murmurs of agreement rippled through some of the crowd. "Frank's got a point," another voice called. "We've got wives, children. Why should they suffer because Ezra Thorne decided to play hero?" Garrett raised his hand for silence. "Because it's the right thing to do. And because last time I checked we were Americans. We don't hand over innocent people to murderers just because we're scared." "Easy for you to say," Frank shot back. "You've got a badge. The rest of us are just targets." The crowd's mood was shifting, fear winning over principle. I'd seen it before. Good people making bad choices because the cost of courage seemed too high. Then Red O'Brien stepped forward. His store was still a burned shell, his livelihood destroyed, but his voice carried authority. "Frank Hollister, you gutless coward!" Red's Irish accent thickened with anger. "I came to this country with nothing, built everything from scratch. Yesterday Wade's men burned it all. You know what I lost? Everything I own. You know what I've got left? My integrity. That's more valuable than any building. Red turned to face the crowd. This woman didn't ask to be hunted. She didn't ask for her family to be slaughtered. She was just living her life until Wade decided she was a witness he couldn't afford to leave alive. He pointed at Kaya. She's a mother, like your wives, like your daughters will be someday. Are we the kind of men who abandon mothers and children because it's convenient? Silence fell over the gathering. Then Clara Hutchins, the widow I'd rejected, stepped forward. I'll speak plain, Clara said. I've been alone for 6 years, lost my husband to cholera. I know what it's like to need help and wonder if anyone will care enough to give it. She looked directly at me, then at Kaya. Ezra Thorne chose to help strangers when he wouldn't even help himself. That tells me everything I need to know about what's right here. Another voice rose, a woman named Margaret who ran the town's only boarding school. My students, half of them are orphans from violence. Apache violence, white violence, it doesn't matter. Violence creates orphans. Wade creates orphans. If we stand by and let him kill this woman, we're telling those children that might makes right. That's not the lesson I'm willing to teach. Slowly, incrementally, the crowd's energy shifted. Fear didn't disappear, but shame began to outweigh it. Marshal Garrett seized the moment. All those willing to stand for justice, for protection of witnesses, for doing what's right, regardless of the cost, show your hands. 20 hands rose, then 25, then 30. Frank Hollister and his supporters, maybe 10 people, remained silent. They wouldn't help, but at least they wouldn't actively oppose. Then it's settled, Garrett said. We defend this town, we defend these people, and we let federal justice take its course. As the crowd dispersed, Clara approached Kaya directly. I resented you, Clara said quietly. When Ezra chose to help you after he'd refused everyone else, I thought you'd stolen something that should have been mine. Kaya's expression remained neutral. I didn't ask him to help. I know. That's what I finally understood. You didn't want to be saved. You wanted to survive. There's a difference. Clara managed a small smile. Fight well tomorrow. For your children. For all of us who are tired of being afraid. Kaya nodded, a gesture of respect between women who'd never be friends, but could be allies. That afternoon, the town transformed into a fortress. Men built barricades from wagons and lumber. Women prepared medical supplies and gathered children into the church, the most defensible building. Marshal Garrett organized defense positions, placing armed townspeople at key locations. I worked alongside Red, hammering boards, positioning cover. Despite his burned store, despite his losses, the Irishman's spirits remained high. You think Wade will really attack the whole town? Red asked. He's cornered. Desperate men do desperate things. Then we'd better be more desperate to survive than he is to win. Kaya moved through the preparations like a general inspecting troops. She showed volunteers Apache defensive tactics, where to position for crossfire, how to use cover effectively, when to hold fire, and when to shoot. The townspeople listened, their initial skepticism giving way to respect as they realized she knew more about warfare than most of them combined. Neol and Sani helped too, carrying water ammunition messages between positions. The children had grown up in violence, learned to be useful in crisis. It broke my heart and impressed me simultaneously. As evening approached, Garrett pulled me aside. Ezra, you've changed, he said. 3 years I've known you as the man who wanted to be left alone. Now look at you, organizing defenses, leading people. What happened? I thought about empty plates and frozen grief, about a question asked in desperation and answered in hope. I remembered something I'd forgotten, I said. That being alive means more than just breathing. The Apache woman. Her name is Kaya. And yes, she reminded me that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to care even when caring means risk. Garrett smiled. Your wife would approve. I think she would. As darkness fell, I found Kaya on the church roof surveying the town's defenses. The elevated position gave a clear view of approaches from all directions. You're very good at this, I observed, joining her. At what War. She was quiet for a moment. When you're Apache, you're born into war. The Spanish made war on us, then the Mexicans, now the Americans. We've been fighting for survival for 300 years. You learn or you die. Is that what you want for Neol and Sani? A life of fighting? No. Her voice softened. I want them to have what I never had. Peace, safety, the chance to grow old without violence. She looked at me. That cabin on your mountain, is the offer still real? Yes. Even knowing what we are, what people will say. People already talk about me. Let them talk about us instead. Kaya smiled a rare, full smile that transformed her face. Then I accept. If we survive this, if Wade doesn't kill us all, we'll survive. You sound certain. I am, because I've got something to live for again, and that makes a man dangerous. She leaned against me, her head resting on my shoulder. We stayed like that, watching the sun set over Tularosa, two people who'd been broken finding something like wholeness together. Below us, Neol appeared, calling up, "Mother, Father Marshall wants everyone for a meeting." Father. The word struck me every time. Not Mr. Ezra anymore. Just Father. Simple. True. The meeting was brief. Garrett laid out the defense plan. Wade would likely attack at dawn, coming from the east where the sun would be in defenders' eyes. Primary defense would be the Main Street barricades. Secondary positions at the church and general store ruins. Fallback position at the marshal's office, which had the thickest walls. Questions? Garrett asked. What about the children? Margaret, the schoolteacher, asked. Church cellar, reinforced door. They stay there no matter what happens above. And if Wade breaks through? Garrett's face was grim. Then we've failed. But we won't fail. After the meeting, as people dispersed to their positions, Riley approached me. His shoulder was bandaged, his arm in a sling, but his eyes were clear. Ezra, I need to say something. Go ahead. I was at Red Canyon, not when the killing happened, but 3 days after. Wade sent me to verify all hostiles were dead. When I got there, he stopped, swallowing hard. There were bodies, women, children, elders, all shot. I filed a report questioning the engagement. Wade buried it, called me naive, said that's how war worked. Why are you telling me this? Because Kaya deserves to know I didn't participate, but I didn't stop it either. That makes me complicit. Riley looked toward where Kaya stood with her children. I can't change the past, but I can make sure the truth comes out, that Wade pays for what he did. Tell her yourself. Riley nodded and approached Kaya. I watched from a distance as he spoke, as Kaya's expression shifted from suspicion to something like understanding. When he finished, she said something brief. Riley nodded, relief visible in his posture, and walked away. Later, Kaya told me what she'd said. You're right. You can't change the past, but you're trying to change the future. That counts. Night fell over Tularosa like a held breath. The town was as ready as it could be. Now came the hardest part, waiting. I found Neol and Sani in the church cellar, sitting with a dozen other children. Neol was teaching the younger ones a hand-clapping game, trying to keep their minds off fear. Sani clutched her cloth doll, humming an Apache lullaby. Hey, I said quietly, kneeling beside them. Father. Neol looked up. Will the bad men come tonight? Probably tomorrow, at dawn. Will you win? I thought about lying about protecting them from reality, but these children had seen too much to believe comforting lies. I don't know, I said honestly, but I promise I'll fight with everything I have to keep you safe. That's all anyone can do, Neol said with wisdom beyond his years. Fight with everything. Sani reached out and took my hand. If something happens to Mother, will you still be our father? The question stabbed through me. Nothing will happen to your mother. But if it does, I looked into her solemn 5-year-old eyes, then yes, I'll still be your father, and I'll take care of you for as long as you need me. Forever. Forever. She nodded, satisfied, and returned to humming her lullaby. Niol squeezed my arm, once a gesture of trust and affection. I left the cellar with my throat tight and my resolve hardened. These children, these people who'd shown courage when it would have been easier to show cowardice, they deserved protection. They deserved justice. Wade would come, and we would be ready. On the church roof I found Kaya at her post. The moon was bright, casting the town in silver and shadow. "The children okay?" she asked. "As okay as they can be." I sat beside her. "Sonny asked if I'd still be their father if something happened to you." "What did you say?" I said yes. "Was that presumptuous?" "No." Kaya's voice was soft. It was perfect. We sat in silence, shoulders touching, watching the eastern horizon for signs of dawn or attack. "Ezra," Kaya said eventually, "after this is over, if we're still alive, I want to do something." "What?" "I want to go back to Red Canyon, where Ahiga and the others died. I want to bury them properly, Apache ceremony, so their spirits can rest." "We'll do it together." "You'd do that?" "Yes. They were your family. That makes them my concern now." She turned to face me fully. "You know what the hardest part of losing Ahiga was? Not the grief, not the loneliness. It was wondering if I'd ever feel safe with someone again, if I'd ever trust someone enough to build a life with them. And now I think maybe I can, with you." I reached for her hand, lacing our fingers together. "When this is over, we'll go to the cabin, all four of us. We'll fix up that extra room for the children, plant Sarah's garden again, raise sheep, live quietly." Quietly sounds nice. After all this, quietly sounds like paradise. Dawn was maybe 2 hours away. The darkest part of night when courage falters and fear grows teeth. Below us, 30 townspeople held positions, checking weapons, saying prayers, making peace with mortality. And somewhere out there in the darkness, Captain Thornton Wade was coming with 20 men and desperate fury. But we were ready. Not because we were soldiers, not because we were heroes, but because sometimes ordinary people pushed far enough find extraordinary courage. Sometimes a town decides that principle matters more than safety, that justice is worth fighting for, that one woman and 2 children deserve protection even at great cost. And sometimes a man who thought he'd lost everything discovers he has one more thing to lose, which means he has everything to fight for. The sky began to lighten in the east, gray, then pink, then gold. "Here we go," Kaya whispered. "Here we go," I echoed. And together we waited for the storm. Par 5, the final stand. They came with the sunrise exactly as predicted. 18 riders emerging from the eastern hills, silhouetted against the burning sky like horsemen of some biblical apocalypse. Captain Thornton Wade rode at their center, his posture rigid with fury and desperation. From my position on the church roof I could see the entire tableau. Marshal Garrett behind the main barricade with 10 armed townspeople. Red O'Brien at the general store ruins with 5 more. Another dozen scattered at windows and corners, rifles ready. It wasn't much, but it was what we had. Kaya knelt beside me, her bow-strung arrows laid out in careful rows. Her face was calm, almost serene. This was what she'd been preparing for her entire life. Not this specific moment, but moments like it. When survival meant fighting and fighting meant accepting you might not survive. "Count," she asked quietly. 18. Wade in the center. I don't see Riley with them." "Good. At least one officer has a conscience." Wade's force stopped at 200 yards out, just beyond effective rifle range. Smart. He knew we had limited ammunition and wanted us to waste it on long shots. Wade himself rode forward alone, stopping at a distance where his voice would carry, but where a shot would be difficult. "People of Tularosa." His voice was parade ground loud, projecting authority. I'm Captain Thornton Wade, United States Army. I have no quarrel with this town. I'm here for one woman, an Apache fugitive wanted for murder of federal soldiers. Send her out and my men right away. You have 1 hour to decide." Silence greeted his ultimatum. The wind carried dust across the street, tumbleweeds rolling like nervous witnesses. Then Marshal Garrett stood visible above the barricade. "Captain Wade, I'm U.S. Marshal John Garrett. Your authority ends where federal law begins. The woman you want is under my protection. She's a witness to crimes you committed. If you want her, you'll have to go through me and everyone who believes in justice." Wade's laugh carried across the distance, cold and mocking. "Justice, Marshal, you're protecting a savage who killed 2 of my men. 2 men who were trying to murder an unarmed woman and her children. I'd call that self-defense. Your opinion doesn't matter. I have 20 men. You have, 30 townspeople, shopkeepers, and farmers playing soldier. We're Americans playing citizens. There's a difference." Wade's patience snapped. "You have 1 hour. After that, anyone between me and that Apache woman is an enemy of the United States Army." He wheeled his horse and rode back to his men. The hour began ticking down. Kaya touched my arm. "He won't wait an hour." "I know. It's theater. He's hoping someone in town loses their nerve." "Will they—" I looked down at the townspeople holding positions. Clara at a window loading an old rifle with shaking hands. Frank Hollister, the man who'd argued against helping us, now crouched behind a water trough with a shotgun. Margaret, the schoolteacher, positioning herself to protect the church doors where children huddled below. "No," I said. "They've made their choice. Now they'll stand by it." 20 minutes passed. Wade's men dismounted, taking positions behind rocks and depression in the land. They were organizing for assault, not waiting for surrender. "Here it comes," Kaya whispered. The first shots rang out, not from Wade's men but from the scarred mercenary who'd led previous attacks. He and 3 others charged the barricades on horseback, firing wildly, trying to draw return fire and gauge our strength. Garrett's discipline held. "Wait," he shouted to his defenders. "Let them come closer." The riders closed to 100 yards, 75, 50. "Fire." The volley was ragged but effective. 2 horses went down. 1 rider tumbled screaming. The others veered off, retreating in disorder. "First blood to us," I said. "First blood only matters if there's a last blood," Kaya replied. She was right. Wade immediately launched a second assault, this time more organized. 6 men advancing on foot from the east, using cover, moving in practiced formation. These weren't hired thugs. These were soldiers. I fired, missed, adjusted, fired again. 1 man stumbled, hit in the leg. Kaya's arrow took another in the shoulder. But they kept coming, their return fire forcing townspeople to duck behind cover. The attackers reached the barricade. Hand-to-hand fighting erupted. I saw Red O'Brien swing a shovel like a club, taking down 1 man. Saw Frank Hollister wrestle with another. The discipline of Wade's assault began to fragment into chaos. Then Wade played his trump card. 7 more riders came from the west, flanking around to hit the town from an unexpected direction. They rode hard for the church, for the weakest point in our defenses. "They're going for the children," Kaya said, horror in her voice. She was already moving, scrambling down from the roof with desperate speed. I followed, nearly falling in my haste. We hit the ground running. The riders were closing on the church, maybe 10 seconds ahead of us. Margaret stood at the doors, her rifle raised, but she was 1 woman against 7 men. Kaya's first arrow took the lead rider in the chest. He fell, his horse careening into another. I fired 3 times, fast shots with more hope than aim. 1 man went down, maybe 2. The remaining riders reached the church. Margaret fired once, then they were on her. She swung her rifle like a club, catching 1 man across the face, but another grabbed her, throwing her aside. "No!" Kaya's scream was primal. She reached the church steps and launched herself at the nearest attacker. Her knife flashed in morning sunlight. The man screamed and fell back, blood streaming from his arm. I tackled another, both of us crashing into the church wall. He was younger, stronger, but I fought with the desperate fury of a man protecting children. My fist connected with his jaw once, twice, 3 times. He went limp. 4 riders remained. They'd dismounted now, realizing horses were a liability in close combat. One of them was the scarred mercenary from before. He recognized Kaya and smiled with ugly anticipation. "There you are," he said. "Wade's paying $500 for you dead. I aim to collect." He drew a knife and advanced. Kaya circled her own blade ready. They were maybe 6 feet apart, studying each other like wolves. "You killed my sister," Kaya said quietly. "I killed a lot of Apache. You'll have to be more specific." "Red Canyon, October 24th. She was 15. The mercenary shrugged. "Business, nothing personal." "Everything is personal." They came together in a blur of motion. Steel rang on steel. The mercenary was skilled, but Kaya fought with the intensity of someone settling accounts. Her blade found openings, drawing blood from his arm, his side. He struck back, his knife slicing across her ribs. She didn't even flinch. I wanted to help, but the other 3 men engaged me simultaneously. I fired my pistol, point-blank dropping one, swung the empty gun at another, connecting with his temple. The 3rd man tackled me, and we rolled across the ground, grappling for advantage. Behind me I heard Margaret scream, not in fear, in fury. She'd recovered her rifle and fired the shot, taking down the man fighting me. Then she advanced on the last standing attacker, working the rifle bolt with shaking hands. "Get away from my church," she said through gritted teeth. The man raised his hands and ran. I turned back to Kaya and the scarred mercenary. They were both bleeding now, both breathing hard. But Kaya's eyes held something the mercenaries didn't. Purpose beyond survival. Justice beyond revenge. "For my sister," she said. "For all of them." Her blade found his throat. He fell gasping, dying. Kaya stood over him, chest heaving, blood on her hands and face. Then she turned and ran for the church doors. "Neol Sani." "We're here, Mother." Neol's voice came from below, strong despite fear. "Stay there. Don't come up." The main battle still raged at the barricades. We ran back, arriving to find Wade's forces regrouping for another assault. But something had changed. The townspeople had tasted success. They'd held against trained soldiers and won. Fear was transforming into determination. Wade himself rode forward again, his face twisted with rage. "Enough!" he roared. "I'll handle this myself." He dismounted and started walking toward the barricade, his hand on his pistol. Garrett stood to meet him. "Captain Wade, stand down. You're under arrest for murder, arms trafficking, and treason." Wade laughed. "You can't arrest me, Marshal. I'm an officer in the United States Army." "You were. Now you're just a criminal." "We'll see about that." Wade's hand moved to his gun. But before he could draw, another voice rang out. "Captain Wade." Everyone turned. Lieutenant Riley stood at the edge of town, his wounded arm in a sling, but his good hand holding a pistol. "Riley," Wade said flatly, "I thought I killed you." "You tried. You failed. Like you've failed at everything else. You're a traitor." "No, sir. I'm a soldier. You're the traitor." Riley raised his voice, speaking to Wade's remaining men. "I'm Lieutenant Marcus Riley, 3rd Cavalry. Captain Wade shot me yesterday for refusing to kill civilians. Before that, he ordered me to falsify reports about weapons seizures. Before that, he ordered me to participate in unauthorized raids on peaceful Apache camps. Everything he's done is illegal. Everything he's ordered us to do is criminal. Any man who continues to follow him is complicit in treason." The effect was immediate. Wade's men, already shaken by casualties and fierce resistance, began to waver. Guns lowered, eyes shifted uncertainly. "Don't listen to him," Wade shouted. "He's been corrupted by Apache lies." "I've been awakened by truth," Riley corrected. "And so should you. We're soldiers, not murderers. We protect people, not slaughter them for profit." 3 of Wade's men threw down their weapons and walked away. Then 4 more. Then another 2. Wade stood alone with 5 loyalists, his authority crumbling like sand. "You're all cowards," he screamed. "Traitors." "The only traitor here is you," Riley said. Then Kaya stepped forward. She walked past the barricade, past Garrett, until she stood in the open street facing Wade. Blood still stained her dress. Her knife still hung from her belt. But her bearing was that of someone who'd already won. "My name is Kaya," she said, her voice carrying in the sudden silence. "Mescalero Apache, daughter of Red Sky Walker, wife of a Higa who you murdered, mother of 2 children you tried to kill." Wade stared at her with naked hatred. "October 24th, 1878. You came to Red Canyon," Kaya continued. "You murdered 23 people, not soldiers, not warriors, women, children, elders. You murdered them because they refused to buy your stolen guns. You murdered them because they were witnesses to your crimes." "Apache lies," Wade spat. Kaya pulled out the journal, holding it high. "Your journal, your handwriting, 3 years of weapons sales, names, dates, prices. Everything you've done is documented here, by you." She walked forward slowly, each step deliberate, until she stood 10 feet from Wade. "You thought killing us all would erase your crimes, but you missed one, and that one was enough." The townspeople emerged from their positions, forming a semicircle behind Kaya, not to attack, to witness, to stand together as a community, saying this far and no farther. Clara, Red, Margaret, Frank, 30 people who'd chosen courage over comfort. "Captain Thornton Wade," Marshal Garrett said formally, moving to stand beside Kaya. "I'm placing you under arrest for murder, arms trafficking, and treason against the United States. You'll be transported to Fort Union to face federal charges." Wade's hand moved to his gun, but before he could draw, Kaya's voice stopped him cold. "Go ahead. Draw. Give me a reason." Her hand rested on her knife. The sun caught her eyes, making them burn with barely contained fury. Wade saw death looking back at him and knew he'd lost. His hand dropped. His shoulders sagged. The transformation from powerful officer to broken criminal happened in seconds. "Cuff him," Garrett ordered. 2 townspeople moved forward with rope binding Wade's hands. The remaining 5 loyalists dropped their weapons and surrendered without fight. It was over. The battle, the chase, the desperate days of running. All of it culminated in this moment. Justice delayed, but not denied. Truth costly, but victorious. Kaya turned and walked back toward the church, toward her children, toward the future she'd fought so hard to secure. I met her halfway. She collapsed against me, not from weakness, but from the sudden release of weeks of tension. I held her, feeling her shake with silent tears, with relief, with the complex emotions of someone who'd survived what should have killed them. "It's over," I said quietly. "Is it really over? The fighting is. The healing starts now." She pulled back to look at me, her face streaked with tears and blood and dirt. "Take us home, Ezra. Take us to your mountain, to that cabin with the extra room and the view of the valley. Take us home." "Our home," I corrected. "Not just mine anymore. Ours." "Ours," she repeated and smiled. Neol and Sani emerged from the church, running to their mother. She gathered them close, the 3 of them forming a unit that I was impossibly wonderfully now part of. "Father," Neol said, looking up at me, "can we really go to the cabin now?" "Yes, as soon as your mother's ready to ride." "I'm ready now," Kaya said firmly. But Garrett approached with Riley, both wearing expressions of official duty. "Not quite yet," Garrett said apologetically. "We need official statements, documentation. Riley's testimony needs to be recorded, and Wade needs to be transported to Fort Union under guard." He paused. 3 days, maybe 4. Then you're free to go." "We'll wait," I said. "We've come this far. We can wait a little longer." Those 3 days passed in a blur of testimony and paperwork, of townspeople rebuilding, of wounds healing. Riley's statement was thorough and damning. Combined with Wade's journal and Kaya's eyewitness account, the case was ironclad. On the 4th day, as we prepared to finally leave for the cabin, the entire town gathered to see us off. Red, already planning to rebuild his store, pressed a package into my hands. Supplies, and a little gift for the children. Clara hugged Kaya, a gesture of respect between women who'd become unlikely allies. You showed us courage means standing for something even when it's hard. Thank you for that. Margaret knelt before Neol and Sani. You children are welcome in my school any time. I mean that. Any Apache child is welcome. Things are changing here. Because of your mother. And they were changing. The battle had transformed Tularosa from a place of fear into a place of principle. Not overnight, not completely, but enough to matter. As we rode out, heading toward the mountains and home, I looked back once, saw the town that had stood together, saw the people who'd chosen right over easy. Then I looked forward at Kaya riding beside me, her children safe and happy, and saw something better than a town. I saw a family. And after 3 years in the winter of grief, I finally saw spring coming again. Part 6. Denouement and Hope. The cabin appeared through the pines like something from a half-forgotten dream. I'd ridden this trail 1,000 times in 3 years, always alone, always returning to emptiness. Now I rode with 3 others, and the cabin that had been a prison was about to become a home. Kaya reined in her horse beside mine, studying the rough-hewn structure nestled against the mountainside. Smoke still rose from the chimney where I'd banked the fire weeks ago, a ghost of my former isolation. The sheep meadow stretched beyond, white shapes dotting the grass like scattered clouds. The spring where Sarah had planted her garden caught afternoon light, the water dancing over stones. It's beautiful, Kaya said softly. It's rough, needs work. The garden's overgrown. The extra room is full of dust and memories. Memories can be cleaned, dust can be swept, rough can become smooth. She looked at me with those dark eyes that had seen too much violence and still found room for hope. This is more than I dreamed we'd have. Neol spoke up from behind us. There's sheep. Can I help with them, Father? We'll all help. That's what families do. We dismounted. Sani ran ahead, the cloth doll from Red's store clutched in one hand. She stopped at the doorway, suddenly shy, and looked back at her mother for permission. Go ahead, little one. This is your home now. The girl disappeared inside with a squeal of delight. Neol followed more cautiously, his 7-year-old responsibility, making him check corners and assess the space with a warrior's instinct. He'd seen too much to trust easily, even in places that looked safe. Kaya and I stood in the doorway together, watching the children explore. The cabin was exactly as I'd left it. 2 plates on the table, one for me, one for ghosts. The bed where Sarah died. Benjamin's small chair in the corner. 3 years of frozen time preserved like insects in amber. You kept everything, Kaya observed. I couldn't let go. And now, I looked at the children, at Kaya, at the possibility of something beyond grief. Now maybe I can. We spent the rest of the day making the cabin livable for 4 instead of 1. I took down the ghost plate, washing both dishes clean of dust and sorrow. Kaya swept the floors with a broom made from bound grass, an Apache technique that Sarah would have admired. Together we opened the extra room, the one built for Benjamin that had stood empty for 3 years. Sunlight poured through the window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. The room was small but solid, a bed frame with no mattress, a shelf for toys that were long gone, a window overlooking the valley where a boy had once watched clouds and dreamed of being a shepherd like his father. This room has sadness in it, Kaya said quietly. Yes. But sadness is not a poison. It's a memory, and memories can share space with new life, she called to the children. Neol, Sani, come see your room. The children bounded in with the enthusiasm of those too young to feel the weight of what had been lost here. Sani immediately claimed the window, pressing her face against the glass. I can see forever, she exclaimed. That's the valley, I told her. In spring, wildflowers cover it. In summer, the sheep graze there. In fall, the aspens turn gold, and in winter, it's all white silence. Which is prettiest? All of them, Each season has its own beauty. Niall examined the room with his characteristic seriousness. "Father, will you teach me to be a shepherd?" "Yes, and your mother will teach you Apache ways. You'll know both worlds." "Is that okay to know both?" Kaya knelt beside her son. "It's more than okay. It's strength. Your father Ahiga gave you Apache blood and courage. Ezra is giving you a home and new skills. You honor both by learning from both." The boy nodded, satisfied with this wisdom. That night we ate together at the table. Not the fancy meal of celebration, but simple food made meaningful by company. Beans and cornbread, venison from my stores, water from the spring. And after the children went to bed in their new room, Kaya and I sat by the fire. "Tomorrow we start repairing," she said. "The garden needs clearing, the sheep pen needs mending, the cabin needs a woman's touch." "A woman's touch," she smiled. "Apache women make their homes efficient. You'll see. Within a week this place will work better than it has in 3 years." "I don't doubt it." Silence fell between us, comfortable and full. The fire crackled. Wind whispered against the cabin walls. Somewhere in the forest an owl called its lonely question to the night. "Ezra," Kaya said eventually, "there's something I need to do, before we can truly move forward." "What?" "Red Canyon, where my people died. I need to go back, to perform burial rites, to speak prayers for their spirits. Apache believe the dead can't rest until properly honored." I'd been expecting this. She'd mentioned it before during our flight from Wade. "When? Soon, maybe next week, when the children are settled. We'll go together." "You don't have to." "Yes, I do. They're your family. That makes them my concern." I paused, choosing words carefully. "And I need to visit Sarah and Benjamin's graves. Need to say proper goodbye. Tell them I'm moving forward. Ask their blessing in whatever way the dead can give it." Kaya's hand found mine. "Then we'll honor our dead together, and then we'll live for the living." "Deal." The week that followed was labor and laughter in equal measure. We cleared Sarah's garden, finding some plants still alive beneath the weeds. Kaya identified herbs I'd thought were just wild growth. Together we replanted, adding Apache vegetables she'd brought in a small pouch. Beans, squash, corn. The 3 sisters, she called them, plants that grew stronger together than apart. Niall learned shepherding with the intensity he brought to everything. I taught him how to move sheep without frightening them, how to check for illness, how to protect against predators. He was a natural, understanding animal behavior instinctively. Sani helped her mother preserve food, learning the old ways. She also spent hours in the meadow making flower crowns and talking to sheep like they were friends. Her innocence surviving despite everything she'd witnessed was a daily reminder that children can heal if given safety and love. On the 8th day, Kaya and I saddled horses for the journey to Red Canyon. We left the children with Samuel Whitehorse, who'd agreed to watch them for 3 days. The old mixed-blood Apache met us at his trading post with gravity and understanding. "You go to honor the dead," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," Kaya replied. "Good. The dead deserve honor. But remember, you honor them best by living well, not by joining them in grief." He looked at me. "Mountain ghost, you're becoming human again. Don't lose that in the canyon of sorrows." "I won't." We rode east, retracing part of the route we'd fled weeks earlier. The land was different now. The desperation was gone, replaced by purpose. We weren't running anymore. We were returning to close a chapter. Red Canyon appeared on the 3rd day. It was beautiful in a stark way. Red rock walls rising like cathedral sides, juniper and pinon dotting the slopes. A creek ran through it, providing water for the camp that had once existed here. Now there was only silence. The camp was gone, burned as Wade had ordered. But bones remained, scattered by animals, bleached by sun, but unmistakably human. 23 people reduced to fragments. Kaya dismounted slowly. Her face was stone, but I saw her hands shaking as she gathered the first bones. "Apache bury their dead quickly. she explained, her voice distant. "But when that's not possible, we gather what remains and speak prayers to guide spirits home." For 3 hours we collected bones. It was grim work that would haunt me for years. Tiny bones that could only be children. Larger ones that spoke of adults cut down in their prime. Kaya identified each set as best she could, speaking names in Apache, telling me who they'd been. This was my sister Kiona. She was 15, wanted to be a healer. This was White Feather. He was 82, told the best stories. These are Nolan's children, twins. They were 3. Each name was a person. Each bone was a life stolen. By the time we'd gathered them all, my throat was tight with rage and sorrow. Kaya built a cairn Apache style, stacking red stones in careful layers. She placed the bones inside along with small tokens. Beads, a piece of pottery, a feather. Things that said these were people, not just casualties. Then she sang. The Apache death song, her voice rising and falling like wind through canyons. I didn't understand the words, but I understood the meaning. Farewell. Rest. Go to the place where the ancestors wait. When she finished, tears streamed down her face. She didn't wipe them away, letting grief have its moment. "Ahiga's body is downstream," she said. "The soldiers threw him in the creek. I want to find him." We searched for an hour before finding what remained. Kaya gathered the bones with reverent care, speaking to her dead husband in Apache. I gave her privacy for this goodbye standing watch at a distance. When she finally returned, her face was calm. Not happy. Not peaceful. But settled. "Thank you," she said simply. "For what?" "For being here. For helping. For understanding this mattered. It matters because you matter. And what matters to you matters to me." She embraced me then, holding tight like I was the only solid thing in a shifting world. We stood like that for long minutes, 2 people who'd both lost too much, finding strength in each other. "Now you," she said finally. "Your turn to honor your dead." We rode to the hillside behind the cabin where 2 wooden crosses marked 2 graves. Sarah and Benjamin buried side by side, overlooking the valley they'd loved. The graves were overgrown with grass and wild flowers. Beautiful in a way. Nature reclaiming what death had taken. I knelt between them, suddenly unsure what to say. For 3 years I'd spoken to them every day in my mind. Now, with Kaya standing witness to this final goodbye, words failed. "Sarah," I finally managed. "I kept my promise. I didn't forget. I set your place every morning. I tended your garden, or tried to. I stayed faithful to your memory." The wind rustled through the grass, Sarah's only answer. "But I'm done being frozen. Done being half alive. You wouldn't want that for me. I know you wouldn't. You'd want me to live. To love. To build something new from what's left." I touched Benjamin's cross. "And you, son. You'd be 10 now. You'd like Neol. He asks questions like you did. He wants to learn everything. He'll be a good shepherd, a good man. I'll teach him the things I would have taught you." Tears came then, hot and cleansing. Grief I'd held frozen for 3 years finally melting. Kaya knelt beside me, her hand on my shoulder, not speaking, just present. "I met someone," I continued. "Her name is Kaya. She's strong and brave and kind. She has 2 children who need a father. I know I'm not replacing you. I know nothing replaces what we had, but I'm building something new, and I hope wherever you are, you're okay with that." The sun broke through clouds, casting light across the valley. Coincidence, probably, but it felt like benediction. "I'll always love you," I said to both graves. "But I'm saying goodbye now. Not forever. Just goodbye to the grief that's been keeping me here." Kaya helped me stand. Together we planted wildflower seeds around both graves, mixing Apache and mountain varieties. Growth from 2 worlds, honoring 2 people. As we rode away, I didn't look back. Couldn't. If I looked back, I might not leave. but Kaya's voice reached me. "They're proud of you, Ezra. I can feel it." "How can you know?" "Because if I died and Neol and Sani found someone like you to care for them, I'd be grateful. Love doesn't end at death. It transforms, becomes something that blesses the living instead of chaining them." 3 months passed like water finding its level. The cabin transformed from a monument to grief into a home full of life. Kaya added Apache touches everywhere. Woven blankets on the walls, herbs drying from the rafters, a cooking pot that made food taste better somehow, though she insisted it was just technique. The children thrived like plants finally getting enough light. Neol became my shadow, learning everything about sheep and mountains and survival. Sani helped her mother and talked to animals and brought joy into every room she entered. And Kaya, she became the center around which everything else orbited. Not because she demanded it, but because her strength, intelligence, and quiet competence made her essential. We didn't marry immediately. There was no rush. We were already living as a family. But eventually, on a crisp October afternoon in 1879, nearly a year after that first desperate November day, Samuel Whitehorse rode up to perform Apache wedding rites. The ceremony was simple and profound. We stood in the meadow, the children as witnesses, Samuel speaking prayers that honored both our pasts and our future. "You've both known loss," Samuel said. "Loss that could have destroyed you. Instead, you found each other, found strength in partnership, found healing in shared purpose." He tied our hands together with a woven cord. Apache marriage is a choice renewed daily, not a prison but a partnership. You agree to walk the same path, but you remain individuals. You agree to support, but not control, to love, but not possess. Do you accept this, Kaya? I do. Do you accept this, Ezra? I do. Then by Apache law and the laws of two hearts choosing each other, you're married. May your path be long and your children many. We'd already agreed that Samuel's ceremony was enough. Legal marriage could come later if needed. What mattered was the commitment, not the paper. That night, with the children asleep and the fire burning low, Kaya and I sat outside watching stars. "Are you happy?" she asked. I thought about it. Happiness was a strange concept after 3 years of numbness. But yes, the weight in my chest was lighter. The mornings didn't feel like punishment anymore. The future looked like something worth walking toward instead of something to endure. "Yes," I said, "I'm happy. Are you?" "More than I expected to be. After Ahiga died, I thought happiness was finished. I thought I'd just survive, raise my children, and wait for my own death." She leaned against me. "But you reminded me that life can surprise you, that endings can become beginnings. You reminded me of the same thing." We sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only exists between people who've been through fire together and emerged stronger. Winter came early that year, snow falling in heavy curtains that transformed the mountain into a white sanctuary. The four of us were snowed in for days at a time, but it felt like blessing, not burden. We told stories by the fire. I taught Nyol chess using pieces carved from pine. Kaya taught Sani traditional Apache beadwork. We existed in a bubble of warmth while the world outside froze. One evening, Neol asked me a question that had clearly been on his mind for days. "Father, do you miss your first family?" The question could have been painful. Instead, it felt honest. This boy learning to navigate complicated emotions deserved an honest answer. "Every day," I told him. "But missing them doesn't mean I love you less. The heart doesn't have limits. It's not like a cup that fills up and can't hold more. It's more like a campfire. You can add more wood and it just burns brighter. So you can love us and still love them." "Exactly." "Good. Because I love you and I still love my father, Ahiga. I was worried that was wrong." Kaya, listening from across the room, smiled with tears in her eyes. "That's not wrong, little hawk," she said. "That's exactly right. We honor the dead by loving the living. Your father, Ahiga, would be happy you found someone to teach you, to protect you, to love you." "What about you, Mother? Are you happy?" "Very happy. even though Father Ezra isn't Apache. Especially because he isn't. He brings different wisdom, different skills. You're learning two worlds, Neol. That makes you twice as strong." The boy considered this, then nodded. Crisis of conscience resolved. Spring arrived with wildflowers and new lambs. It was April of 1880, 18 months since Kaya had first stumbled into my life bleeding and desperate. The sheep population had doubled, which meant more work, but also more security. Kaya's garden exploded with growth, the three sisters thriving in mountain soil. We had enough food to last another year, enough wool to trade for supplies, enough stability to plan for the future instead of just surviving the present. On a warm April morning, I found Kaya in the garden, her hands in the soil, her face peaceful. "I'm pregnant," she said without preamble. My mind went blank. Then it filled with 1,000 emotions: joy, fear, hope, terror, grief for Benjamin, anticipation for this new child. "Are you sure?" "Yes, about 2 months along. The baby will come in late fall." "How do you feel about it?" She looked up at me, her expression complex. Scared, happy, worried, hopeful, all of it at once. She paused. "Is it okay? I know this changes things." I knelt beside her in the garden soil. "It's more than okay. It's perfect. Complicated and scary, and perfect. What if I can't love this child as much as Neol and Sani?" "You will. The heart doesn't have limits. Remember, you taught me that." She laughed, then cried, then laughed again. "We're going to have a baby. We're going to have a baby." Neol and Sani took the news with the uncomplicated enthusiasm of children. They immediately began planning what they'd teach the baby, arguing over whether it would be a boy or girl, debating names. The pregnancy progressed smoothly through summer and into fall. Kaya remained strong, working alongside me until the final weeks. Samuel visited twice to check on her, pronouncing her healthy and the baby positioned correctly. On a cold November night, with the first snow of winter falling outside, Kaya went into labor. I'd been through this once before with Sarah and Benjamin. It hadn't ended well. The fear nearly paralyzed me. But Kaya was not Sarah. She was Apache, trained in birthing practices passed down through generations. And Samuel was there, having arrived 2 days earlier with the instinct of someone who'd delivered 100 babies. "Ezra," Samuel said calmly, "keep the water hot. Watch the children. Let your wife work. Women have been doing this since the beginning of time." So I waited. Boiled water. Kept Neol and Sani occupied with stories and games. Tried not to remember another birth, another night, another outcome. 3 hours later, a baby's cry split the air. Samuel emerged from the bedroom smiling. "You have a son. Strong lungs, good color. 10 fingers, 10 toes, and very annoyed at being born." I rushed in. Kaya held a small bundle, exhausted but radiant. The baby, red-faced and squalling, was indeed perfect. "He's beautiful," I managed. "He's angry." Kaya laughed. "Like his father when I first met him." "What do we name him?" We'd discussed this. It needed to honor both worlds, both families. "James," Kaya said, "for your world, and Dakota for mine. It means friend to everyone. James Dakota Thorne. He'll have quite the identity to live up to." "He will. With you as his father and me as his mother, how could he not?" Neol and Sani crowded in, desperate to meet their new brother. They touched his tiny hands with reverence and wonder. "He's so small," Sani whispered. "You were 2 once," Kaya told her. "Will he be Apache or white?" Neol asked. "He'll be both, like you, like this family. We're making something new here, not Apache, not white, but something that honors both and belongs to neither. Something uniquely ours." As I held my son for the first time, feeling his weight in my arms, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. A question asked in desperation. a choice made in grief, a family built from broken pieces. 3 years ago, I'd been a ghost, alive but not living, existing but not participating. I'd set plates for the dead and forgotten how to welcome the living. Then Kaya had arrived with 2 children and a challenge. "Do you want a companion, or another winter alone?" I'd answered without words. And in answering, I'd begun the long journey back to being human. Now, holding this new life surrounded by children who called me father, and a woman who'd transformed my prison into a home, I understood something fundamental. Grief doesn't end. It transforms. It becomes part of who you are, not something that defines you. Sarah and Benjamin would always be part of my story, but they were the beginning chapters, not the whole book. This moment, this family. This was the next chapter, and it was just beginning. Outside, snow fell heavy and clean, covering the mountain in white. Inside, a fire burned warm. Children laughed, a baby cried, a woman rested, and a man who'd thought his story was over discovered it was really just getting started. Winter came, but this time I wasn't alone, and I never would be again. The question that had changed everything echoed in my memory. Do you want a companion or another winter alone? I'd chosen companion. And in choosing, I'd chosen life. Not the life I'd planned, not the life I'd lost, but a life worth living nonetheless. A life full of laughter and labor, of children and sheep, of quiet evenings and busy mornings. A life that honored the past without being imprisoned by it. A life that looked forward with hope instead of backward with regret. As I looked around the cabin at my family sleeping peacefully, at the life we'd built from ashes and sorrow, I felt something I hadn't felt in 3 long years. Gratitude, not for the pain, but for what came after. For second chances and new beginnings. For the reminder that endings are only permanent if we let them be. For the woman who'd asked a question that shattered my frozen grief. For the children who'd given me a reason to thaw. For the mountain that had been my prison and become my sanctuary, and for the future uncertain and precious and ours. The snow fell, the fire burned, the night wrapped around us like a blanket, and in a cabin on a mountain in New Mexico territory, a family slept. Not perfect, not without scars, but together, and that was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.